10 most mysterious archaeological discoveries that scientists still can't explain. There are secrets that have been buried deep beneath the ground for thousands of years, yet with just a single strike of a shovel, history itself can be rewritten. There are skeletons that, at a single glance, leave scientists unable to explain what truly happened. There are graves that the more they are excavated, the more confusing the answers become. And what is truly unsettling is this: some discoveries still, even to this day, have no final explanation. Hello and welcome to the Ancient History Channel, where we journey back through time together to touch the mysteries that humanity has yet to fully unravel. Across the world, from Europe and the Middle East to Asia and South America, archaeologists continue to uncover tombs, artifacts, and strange traces that raise serious questions even among experts. In some places, they have found entire hoards of tens of thousands of medieval coins hidden inside an old bronze cauldron. In others, they have excavated skeletons buried alongside the weapons of ancient warriors, as if they were still preparing for battle after death. But there are also discoveries that send chills down the spine, such as the grave of a woman whose entire face had been lost, while the man buried beside her remained almost perfectly preserved. Or ancient coffins carved with human faces found in the Middle East, carrying the imprint of a civilization that existed more than 3,000 years ago. And the strange thing is, the deeper scientists investigate, the more they realize that not everything has an easy answer. Some mysteries seem to remain silent beneath the earth, waiting for technology advanced enough to awaken them. In today's video, we will explore the 10 most mysterious archaeological discoveries on the planet. Stories that not only challenge scientists, but also make anyone who hears them ask the same question: just how mysterious was the ancient history of humanity? Are you ready to begin this journey? If so, let's dive in right now. 24 medieval warriors buried with their weapons. Shock archaeologists in Poland. Just imagine this for a moment. What if you were having a completely ordinary day at work, and the excavator beneath your feet suddenly struck a cemetery that had been buried for more than 1,000 years? How would you react? Would you be calm enough to keep digging when no one had any idea what might still be hidden beneath the ground? Sounds like something straight out of a science fiction movie, doesn't it? But the truth is, this actually happened in real life. And what archaeologists uncovered afterward was even stranger than anyone could have imagined. The story began in 2024, during the construction of a natural gas pipeline in the village of Borkowo in northern Poland. As workers were excavating the site, they unexpectedly noticed unusual signs beneath the soil. They immediately stopped all construction and notified the local authorities. Within just a few hours, archaeologists arrived to examine the area. At that moment, no one realized they were about to begin one of Poland's most remarkable archaeological excavations in recent years. So, what do you think they found? One ancient grave after another slowly emerged from the earth, and as the excavation continued, more and more burials were uncovered. Eventually, experts determined that the site was a cemetery dating back to the 10th century, meaning it had remained hidden for over a millennium. But what truly stunned everyone was the identity of the people buried there. Archaeologists uncovered the remains of 24 adult men, all resting beneath the soil. What made the discovery especially unusual was that nearly every one of them had been buried with weapons. Doesn't that seem a little strange? Normally, a cemetery reflects how people honored and laid their loved ones to rest. But here, every grave seemed to tell the story of a very different life. Alongside the skeletons were battle axes, arrowheads, knives, rings, and strings of red agate beads, all still lying in their original positions after more than 1,000 years. Just by examining these artifacts, archaeologists were faced with a major question: who were these men really? Determined to find the answer, researchers began investigating. According to the initial findings, the remains date to the reign of Duke Mieszko I, who ruled Poland from AD 960 to 992. He is widely regarded as the leader who laid the foundation for the unified Polish state. Because of this, many experts believe these men may have been elite warriors who once fought under his command. However, another theory has also emerged. Some researchers suggest they may have been among the first Christians living in the region during a time when Poland was undergoing a major religious transformation. Oddly enough, the greatest mystery isn't the number of skeletons or the weapons found beside them, it's the way they were buried. According to pagan traditions, the dead were often buried with numerous grave goods to use in the afterlife. Early Christian burial practices, on the other hand, followed very different customs. Yet this cemetery appears to bear signs of both belief systems. The bodies were buried intact rather than cremated, which aligns with early Christian practices. However, they were also accompanied by valuable grave goods, a tradition much more closely associated with pagan beliefs. And that's not all. When archaeologists carefully studied the excavation map, they noticed something even more unusual. The graves were not arranged in orderly rows, as was typical of most medieval cemeteries. Instead, they appeared to have been placed somewhat randomly, as though the burials had taken place under a variety of different circumstances. This seemingly minor detail left the research team puzzled because it didn't match any known pattern of medieval burial grounds. That is precisely why the discovery at Borkowo quickly attracted the attention of archaeologists around the world. The site doesn't simply tell the story of 24 individuals who died more than 1,000 years ago. It also reflects a turbulent period in history when ancient beliefs were gradually giving way to a new religious era. Every grave, every burial artifact, and every skeleton represents another piece of a historical puzzle. But even today, many pieces of that puzzle are still missing. So, what do you think? After hearing the entire story, do you believe this really was the final resting place of an elite force that once served Duke Misko I? Or do you think another secret still lies hidden beneath the surface? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Who knows, your theory might one day match the very explanation that archaeologists ultimately proved to be true. And wouldn't that be incredible? An 800-year-old treasure of 20,000 medieval silver coins was buried beneath a backyard. You know, the world of archaeology is truly fascinating. There are treasures that people spend their entire lives searching for across the globe without ever finding. Yet sometimes, someone who isn't even looking for treasure, armed with nothing more than a shovel, no secret map, and no high-tech metal detector, can accidentally stumble upon one of the most astonishing archaeological discoveries imaginable while simply digging for fishing worms. And the story you're about to hear is the perfect example of that. It reminds us that history is sometimes rewritten through the most ordinary moments. It all began in 2024, on the grounds of a summer cottage in Stockholm County, Sweden. A man was digging in his yard to collect worms for an upcoming fishing trip when he unexpectedly struck something unusual buried deep beneath the ground. At first, he had no idea he had found anything significant, but the deeper he dug, the more fragments of metal and ancient coins began to appear. Realizing that this could be an important discovery, the man immediately stopped digging and contacted the local authorities. That single decision marked the beginning of an excavation that would astonish the archaeological community. Just a few days later, experts arrived at the site. As the final layers of soil were carefully removed, they could hardly believe what they were seeing. Buried beneath the ground was a bronze cauldron, worn away by centuries of time, yet still filled to the brim with shimmering silver coins. Just imagine that for a moment. After lying undisturbed underground for hundreds of years, this weathered cauldron had silently protected an enormous fortune that no one even knew existed. What does that tell us? For archaeologists, the preliminary inventory revealed something extraordinary. The find was identified as a medieval treasure weighing about 13 pounds, containing an estimated more than 20,000 silver coins. That number alone makes it one of the largest medieval silver hoards ever discovered in Sweden. Archaeologist Sofia Andersson explained that the research team has not yet determined the exact number of coins, but she believes the final total could easily exceed 20,000. In other words, a man who simply wanted to dig up a few worms for fishing accidentally uncovered the kind of treasure that many archaeologists spend their entire careers hoping to find. But perhaps the most fascinating part of the discovery is the coins themselves. According to the initial analysis, most of the coins date back to the 12th century. Many of them bear the inscription Canutus, the Latin name of King Knut Eriksson, who ruled Sweden from AD 1173 to around 1195. This indicates that the coins were minted during his reign, and the surprises didn't end there. Experts also identified several extremely rare coins known as bishop's coins. Their surfaces are engraved with the image of a bishop holding a pastoral staff, a symbol of the church's authority during the Middle Ages. Artifacts like these rarely survive in such remarkable numbers. By now, you're probably wondering the same thing the researchers are. Why would such an enormous treasure be buried deep underground, only to be abandoned forever? That remains the biggest mystery surrounding the discovery. According to researchers, the late 12th century was a turbulent period in Swedish history. Military conflicts and campaigns to expand Swedish territory into parts of Finland created widespread instability. During those uncertain times, many wealthy families buried their valuables, hoping to return and recover them after the wars had ended. But for reasons no one can know for certain, the owner of this treasure never came back. Perhaps they were killed in battle. Perhaps they died during an epidemic. Or perhaps they were forced to leave the region forever. Whatever happened, the bronze cauldron containing tens of thousands of silver coins remained hidden beneath the earth for nearly 800 years. What makes this story even more compelling is that the research is still ongoing. Experts have not yet fully uncovered the treasure's origin or its complete historical significance. Meanwhile, the Stockholm County Administrative Board has submitted a report to the Swedish National Heritage Board, the agency responsible for deciding whether the lucky man who made this extraordinary discovery will receive any financial reward or legal compensation. So, what about you? If one day you were working in your own backyard and suddenly uncovered a bronze cauldron filled with tens of thousands of ancient silver coins, how do you think you would react? Would you stay calm and report the discovery to the authorities just as this man did? Or would you simply stand there in disbelief, unable to process what had just happened right before your eyes? Let me know your answer in the comments below. Rare ancient Roman weapons cache, discovered in a remote cave in Israel. An ancient cache of Roman-era weapons has just been discovered in a remote cave in Israel. But behind these swords lies a historical story filled with mysteries that have yet to be solved. The weapons were found inside a small cave located within the Un Nature Reserve, a famous site that is also extremely difficult to access. The reserve sits along the western shore of the Dead Sea, a land rich with mysterious stories and traces of ancient history. It seemed almost impossible that anyone would ever discover this hidden cache. Yet archaeologists bravely made their way across steep, treacherous cliffs to uncover another remarkable piece of the ancient past. So why were Roman weapons hidden inside such a mysterious cave? Researchers have proposed a fascinating theory. They believe the weapons may have been war booty captured by Jewish rebels during their uprising against the rule of the Roman Empire. At that time, Roman troops came under attack, and these swords may have been seized by Jewish fighters following fierce battles. When they were finally discovered, the Roman swords were astonishingly well preserved. Archaeologists were amazed to find that the blades were still sharp and had remained inside their original wooden scabbards. Even the finely crafted hilts, made of either wood or metal, had survived the passage of time. Most remarkably, 3 of the swords featured blades measuring approximately 24 to 26 inches, matching the design of the spatha, the standard sword carried by Roman soldiers. A 4th sword had a shorter blade measuring about 18 inches and may have belonged to a soldier of lower rank. What makes this discovery even more fascinating is the preservation process. After carefully removing the swords from a narrow crevice inside the cave, archaeologists immediately transported them to the laboratories of the Israel Antiquities Authority for examination and conservation. The initial analysis revealed that these were standard-issue swords used by Roman soldiers stationed in the ancient region of Judea, a strategically important territory in the history of the Roman Empire. These weapons offer us a clearer glimpse into the lives of Roman soldiers, as well as the uprisings and intense battles fought between 2 powerful forces. They were not merely instruments of war. They also serve as vivid evidence of the relentless struggles that shaped history over thousands of years. You may be wondering, besides these swords, what else could still be hidden inside unexplored caves and forgotten landscapes? What other historical secrets are waiting to be uncovered? Although we cannot yet answer those questions with certainty, discoveries like this remind us that countless mysteries of the ancient world remain unsolved. And with every new archaeological find, we come one step closer to understanding the past. Until then, we can only look forward to the remarkable discoveries archaeologists will bring us in the years ahead. 2,000-year-old Roman horse head, pulled from a well in Germany, a discovery that rewrote history. The story began in 2009 during an archaeological excavation in the state of Hesse in central Germany. Experts from the Hesse State Museum were investigating an area believed to have once been a Roman military outpost. At first, they were simply hoping to uncover a few pieces of pottery or the remains of ancient structures. But the deeper they dug, the more they realized that something far more extraordinary was hidden beneath the ground. Then came the unforgettable moment. Buried beneath layers of soil and mud that had accumulated over nearly 2 millennia, a massive metal object slowly began to emerge. But it wasn't until the final layer of earth was carefully cleared away that the entire archaeological team was left almost speechless. Before them stood an enormous bronze horse head, crafted with astonishing attention to detail. Despite having remained underground for nearly 2,000 years, the horse's facial features, flowing mane, and ears were still remarkably well preserved, demonstrating the incredible bronze casting skills of the ancient Romans. Just imagine being the first person to see this artifact after 2,000 years. How would you feel? It would probably be more than simple excitement. It would feel as though you were reaching out and touching a piece of history itself. After careful study, experts determined that the bronze horse head had originally been part of a monumental Roman equestrian statue known as Augustus. The statue was erected when the Romans established a military outpost in what is now the German state of Hesse. At that time, the Roman Empire was steadily expanding northward, and monumental statues like this served not only as works of art, but also as powerful symbols of Roman authority and imperial presence. However, what fascinated archaeologists most was not simply the beauty of the artifact, but the story behind it. Just 5 years after the statue was erected, history took a dramatic turn. The Romans suffered one of the greatest military defeats in their history during the Battle of the Teutoburg Forest. Following their decisive victory, the ancient Germanic tribes rose up and destroyed many symbols of Roman power throughout the region. The statue of Augustus was no exception. Based on the surviving evidence, researchers believe the monument was deliberately smashed into numerous pieces. The bronze horse head was separated from the rest of the statue and thrown into a well, where it remained hidden for nearly 2,000 years. Ironically, the thick layer of mud and the nearly sealed environment at the bottom of the well protected the artifact from severe corrosion, allowing it to survive in astonishing condition until the present day. Isn't that remarkable? Sometimes, an act intended to destroy something ends up becoming the perfect method of preserving it. Had the horse head not been thrown into that well all those centuries ago, it might have been melted down or completely destroyed. If that had happened, the modern world might never have known it had ever existed. More importantly, this discovery provided historians with invaluable evidence about the extent of the Roman presence in what is now Germany. For many years, some scholars believed that the Romans had never constructed large-scale monuments in this region. However, the discovery of this massive bronze statue, along with other archaeological evidence found at the site, demonstrated that the Romans had invested significantly in the area before their devastating defeat at the Battle of the Teutoburg Forest forced them to abandon their ambitions of expanding farther north. Today, the bronze horse head is regarded as one of the rarest and most valuable Roman artifacts ever discovered in Germany. It is not merely an extraordinary work of ancient art, it is also a silent witness to a turning point that forever changed the course of European history. More than 70 skeletons, discovered in a 1,000-year-old pre-Inca tomb in Peru. My friends, let me ask you something. If an ancient tomb contained the remains of dozens of adults and children buried together, would you believe it was the final resting place of several generations of one family? Or could it be the silent evidence of a terrible tragedy that unfolded 1,000 years ago? If you don't yet have your own answer, then let's travel back in time to 2023. That was the year archaeologists from the Free University of Brussels, Belgium, made an extraordinary discovery while excavating the ancient religious center of Pachacamac, located about 20 miles southeast of Lima, Peru. Their discovery would begin to answer those very questions. At first, the archaeologists, just like the rest of us, believed they had uncovered nothing more than an ordinary ancient burial, similar to many others found in the past. But the farther they expanded the excavation, the more they realized they were looking at something far greater than they had ever expected. Once the final layers of soil had been carefully removed, an enormous oval-shaped communal tomb, measuring approximately 66 feet in length, emerged from the ground. Dating to around AD 1000, the burial belongs to the pre-Inca period, several centuries before the rise of the mighty Inca Empire. The sheer size of the tomb alone convinced experts that it was one of the most significant archaeological discoveries made at the Pachacamac site in recent years. Inside the tomb, archaeologists uncovered the remains of more than 70 individuals, including dozens of infants and young children. It was a scene that left everyone speechless. Each skeleton seemed to tell the story of a life that had ended 1,000 years ago. Yet the reason all of these people were buried together remains a mystery to this day. The discoveries didn't stop there. The research team also uncovered around 100 grave goods buried alongside the deceased. Just imagine it. After 1,000 years, these objects were still resting exactly where they had been placed. Among them were ceramic animal figurines depicting dogs and guinea pigs, pottery vessels, jewelry crafted from copper and gold alloys, bottle gourds, and beautifully carved wooden masks painted with human faces. Every artifact reflects the remarkable craftsmanship and rich spiritual beliefs of the pre-Inca people who lived more than a millennium ago. According to Dr. Lawrence Owens of the Free University of Brussels, the large number of valuable grave goods does not necessarily mean this was a royal burial. Based on the arrangement of both the skeletons and the artifacts, he and his colleagues believe the site was most likely a communal burial place used by multiple families belonging to the same extended lineage. In other words, this may have been a cemetery serving a close-knit community connected by blood rather than the final resting place of kings or nobles, as many people might assume. But that raises another question, one that has become the greatest challenge for archaeologists. Were all more than 70 individuals buried at the same time? Or was this tomb used continuously over many generations? If everyone was buried at once, what happened? Could an epidemic, a natural disaster, or a violent conflict have claimed the lives of an entire community? On the other hand, if the tomb served as a burial site for generations, why was it organized in such an unusual way? So far, researchers have been unable to provide a definitive answer. They continue to analyze the skeletal remains, establish more precise dates, and conduct DNA studies in the hope of uncovering the relationships among the people buried within the tomb. Isn't this what makes archaeology so remarkable? Sometimes the greatest value of an excavation isn't the gold, the treasures, or the ancient artifacts themselves. Instead, it's the opportunity to bring us closer to the lives of people who disappeared from the world long ago. Every skeleton, every wooden mask, and every burial object is like another missing piece of history, quietly waiting for modern researchers to put the puzzle together and tell the story of a civilization that faded into the distant past. Isn't that absolutely fascinating? The 3,300-year-old clay coffin with a human face discovered in Israel. There are priceless artifacts that are not made of gold or precious stones, yet their historical value is powerful enough to reshape what we know about the past. To prove this, I will take you to a surprising excavation site where archaeologists not only discovered an ancient skeleton, but also uncovered a coffin so rare in Egyptian style that for the past 50 years, Israel has only recorded one similar artifact. This story began in 2016 during an archaeological excavation near Tel Shaddud in the Jezreel Valley in northern Israel. Experts from the Israel Antiquities Authority were studying a site believed to have been inhabited thousands of years ago. At first, they only expected to find traces of ancient structures or familiar pottery fragments. However, the deeper they dug, the more they realized the site was hiding something far more significant. Then came the moment that made the entire research team hold their breath. Just beneath a thick layer of soil, they discovered a cylindrical clay coffin, still remarkably well preserved despite being over 3 millennia old. But what shocked everyone was not just its age, it was the lid. On it, ancient craftsmen had sculpted a human face with a calm expression, along with 2 arms crossed over the chest, a burial style strongly associated with ancient Egypt. Imagine this. After more than 3,300 years, seeing that face emerging from the earth, would it feel like you were staring at someone who had only just fallen into a 1,000-year sleep? Through research, experts determined that the coffin dates back to the reign of Pharaoh Seti I, who ruled from around 1290 to 1279 BC. This was a period when Egypt was expanding its influence into the Near East. Therefore, the discovery of an Egyptian-style coffin in Israel immediately drew major attention from archaeologists, as it reflects the connections between ancient Egypt and this region more than 3,000 years ago. But the story did not end there. When the coffin was carefully opened, archaeologists found the skeleton of an adult male still inside. Around him were various burial objects, including ceramic jars containing food, a dagger, a bronze bowl, and animal bones. According to experts, these items were likely not placed randomly. They may have been offerings to the gods, as well as provisions for the deceased's journey into the afterlife, consistent with ancient Egyptian beliefs. Have you noticed something fascinating here? The ancient Egyptians believed that death was not the end, but the beginning of another life. Because of this belief, they carefully prepared everything for the deceased, from food and weapons to essential personal belongings. This coffin is a vivid testament to that worldview, even though it was discovered in Israel rather than Egypt. What makes this discovery even more remarkable is how extremely rare such clay coffins with human faces are in Israel. According to the Israel Antiquities Authority, before the 2016 excavation, the most recent similar coffin had been found about 50 years earlier. This means that after half a century, archaeologists finally had the chance to study another artifact of this extraordinary type. As a result, the coffin not only helps researchers better understand ancient Egyptian burial rituals, but also provides important evidence of the presence, influence, and connections between Egyptian civilization and the ancient Canaanite region. Every carved line, every burial object, and even the skeleton itself feels like a piece of a larger puzzle, slowly revealing a chapter of history long buried by time. And what do you think? Who was the man inside this extraordinary coffin? Was he an Egyptian official sent to the land of Canaan, a warrior serving under Pharaoh Seti I, or simply a local resident of high status who was buried according to Egyptian customs? Share your thoughts in the comments. Perhaps one of your theories today may be closer than we think to the answer archaeologists will uncover in the future, as more secrets buried beneath the land of Israel continue to be revealed. The 2,500-year-old burial pit containing 4 chariots and over 90 horse skeletons that shocked China. Have you ever wondered how kings and nobles in China were sent into the afterlife more than 2,500 years ago? Was a single coffin enough, or did they bring an entire army with them? War chariots and dozens of war horses to continue their journey in the world beyond death? It may sound like a legend, but it truly existed. And what is even more astonishing is that this secret lay hidden beneath the earth for millennia, until an archaeological excavation accidentally opened a gateway back to the spring and autumn period, one of the most turbulent yet glorious eras in ancient Chinese history. In 2024, during the excavation of an ancient tomb site in the city of Xinjiang, Henan Province in central China, experts from the Henan Provincial Institute of Cultural Heritage and Archaeology uncovered a series of extraordinary archaeological remains. At first, they only expected to find familiar artifacts such as pottery, bronze items, or traces of ancient architecture. But as each layer of soil was carefully removed, what emerged left the entire team in shock. Can you guess what could astonish even experienced archaeologists? Deep underground, they discovered a massive burial pit, and inside it were 4 ancient chariots preserved in astonishing condition. Initial analysis showed that these chariots date back to the spring and autumn period, roughly between 770 and 476 BC, more than 2,500 years ago. Simply finding multiple intact chariots at once is already extremely rare in Chinese archaeology. But what stunned researchers even more was the size of one of the chariots. The largest measured approximately 8.4 feet long and 5.4 feet wide, making it the biggest ancient chariot ever discovered in Xinjiang. Just imagine, more than 2 millennia ago, when most vehicles were entirely handcrafted, ancient artisans built such a massive structure with remarkable durability. Even more impressive, the surface of the chariot was decorated with intricate bronze fittings and animal bone inlays, showing that the craftsmanship and metallurgical skills of the spring and autumn Chinese civilization had already reached a highly advanced level. But the excavation did not stop there. As researchers expanded the dig, they made another staggering discovery: the skeletal remains of more than 90 horses buried alongside the chariots. At that moment, the entire site fell into silence. Over 90 war horses buried in a single tomb complex not only reflects the enormous scale of the burial ritual, but also strongly suggests that the owner of the tomb must have been someone of extremely high status. According to preliminary assessments, this burial site likely belonged to a noble family or royal lineage of the state of Zheng, one of the political entities during the spring and autumn period. At that time, chariots were not just transportation or instruments of war, they were symbols of power, wealth, and social rank. Therefore, burying multiple chariots along with dozens of war horses was a ritual reserved only for the highest elite class. Do you find this astonishing? Just by examining how someone was buried, archaeologists can infer their identity and level of power in life. This is what makes archaeology so fascinating. Every artifact is not just an ancient object, it is a silent witness telling the story of the past. Today, experts are still continuing their study of the bronze artifacts discovered in the tomb. They hope detailed analyses will shed light on the metallurgical technology, chariot-making techniques, and production methods of people in China more than 2,500 years ago. At the same time, these artifacts may also provide crucial clues about the identity of the buried individual, their social status, and the burial customs of the state of Zheng. What is truly fascinating is that every new discovery feels like opening another door into history. A carved bronze fragment, a decayed wheel, or even a horse skeleton that seems meaningless at first glance can help scientists reconstruct a civilization long lost to time. And it is discoveries like these that continue to deepen our understanding of life, warfare, and power during one of the most important periods in ancient Chinese history. The weapon cache in the Yotvingian warrior's grave reveals the power of a fearsome European warrior tribe. Did you know that in ancient times, there was a people who were praised for their terrifying combat abilities, but were also infamous for bold raids and merciless battles? They emerged in history and then gradually disappeared from its pages, leaving behind only faint traces for later generations. Yet after hundreds of years buried underground, a grave discovered in Poland has unexpectedly revealed secrets about one of the most powerful warriors of that tribe. So what kind of status would a person need to be buried with an entire cache of weapons? Let's travel back in time to uncover this fascinating story. But before we get to the excavation, we need to understand who this grave's owner was. They were the Yotvingians, also known as the Sudovians, a Baltic tribe that lived in areas of present-day Poland, Lithuania, and Belarus from around the 5th century BC up to the Middle Ages. They were widely known across Eastern Europe for their exceptional fighting skills and strong warrior spirit. Not only did they defend their own territories, but the Yotvingians also served as mercenaries for the princes of Kiev and Rus. At the same time, they frequently clashed with Polish princes and the Teutonic Knights. Historical records often describe them as a fierce, resilient, and extremely difficult to subdue tribe. However, after many centuries, these warriors gradually vanished, leaving behind only scattered written records and buried archaeological remains. In 2024, during the excavation of a medieval Yotvingian cemetery near the city of Suwałki in northeastern Poland, experts from the Suwałki Regional Museum made a discovery that immediately drew the attention of archaeologists. At first, they only expected to find a few ordinary graves, similar to previous excavations. But as layers of soil were carefully removed, a burial containing an unusual number of artifacts began to emerge. Can you guess what immediately told archaeologists this was not the resting place of an ordinary person? The answer lay in the grave goods surrounding the skeleton. As the excavation continued, a large number of weapons and combat equipment gradually appeared. Swords, daggers, arrowheads, horse spurs, belt buckles, horse fittings, and dozens of other small pieces of military gear were all found in the same grave. Without even needing detailed analysis, experts already understood that the person buried here must have been someone of extremely high status within Yotvingian society. Have you noticed something interesting? In many ancient cultures, the dead were buried with objects connected to their lives. So when a grave is filled with weapons and combat equipment like this, it almost tells us directly that the person inside was a true warrior, possibly even a leader or someone with an important role within the tribe. Through research, archaeologists determined that the burial dates from the 11th to the 13th century, a period when the Yotvingians were still a formidable force in the Baltic region. This was also a time when they were frequently engaged in conflicts with neighboring powers in order to defend their territory and maintain influence. Therefore, the presence of so many weapons in the grave not only reflects the status of the deceased, but also partially recreates a brutal era of medieval European warfare. The 1,000-year-old noble couple's graves in Germany, the husband's skeleton intact, while the wife's facial bones mysteriously vanished. Have you ever noticed something truly fascinating in archaeology? Sometimes, what takes scientists years to study is not gold, silver, or million-dollar treasures. Instead, what troubles them the most is often just an incomplete skeleton, because every missing bone, every unusual trace, can be a piece of a story buried for thousands of years. And today's case is a perfect example. This story began in 2024 in the city of Eisleben, in the German state of Saxony-Anhalt. During an archaeological excavation there, experts from the State Office for Heritage Management and Archaeology, Saxony-Anhalt, LDA, discovered two ancient graves lying right next to each other. From the very first moments, they realized these were not ordinary burials. Surprisingly, both graves were less than 12 inches below the surface, yet they still preserved a remarkable number of traces after nearly a millennium. When the final layer of soil was carefully brushed away, the first skeleton slowly emerged. It belonged to a woman. But as archaeologists cleaned the area around the skull, the atmosphere at the excavation site grew increasingly silent. They discovered that all of her facial bones had completely disappeared, leaving behind only an empty, mysterious skull. There were no clear signs of disturbance, yet the face seemed to have vanished in a way that no one could easily explain. Try to imagine being one of the archaeologists at that moment. If you were the first person to see that skull, what would you think? Was it simply natural decomposition over centuries, or had someone once opened the grave in the past? And the mystery did not end there. Even more strangely, right beside the woman was the grave of a man, believed by experts to be her husband. The two graves were side by side, buried at the same depth, in the same type of soil, and dated to the same period. Yet the man's skeleton was almost perfectly preserved. His skull and facial bones remained intact, creating a puzzling contrast between two individuals buried just a few feet apart. Not only the skeletons, but the excavation also revealed other valuable finds. Inside both graves, archaeologists discovered jewelry, coins, and finely crafted accessories, indicating that both individuals belonged to a wealthy social class. In particular, the man's grave contained several burial goods with strong military significance, including a dagger, a belt set with metal fittings, and a ceremonial staff, items often associated with military commanders or leaders in the medieval period. Based on these findings, experts concluded that the couple were local nobles who lived around the 10th century AD. Their social status was clearly high, and the burial customs reflected the wealth and power they once held in life. However, the more researchers learned about them, the more they were puzzled by the woman's case. Why did only her facial bones disappear? If environmental conditions were responsible, why was the man's skeleton next to her unaffected? If human intervention was involved, what was the purpose of removing only the facial bones? Or could this represent a special burial ritual unknown to us today? At present, experts continue to analyze the skeletons, soil composition, and remaining traces in hopes of finding answers. But for now, the woman's empty skull remains one of the greatest mysteries of the excavation. And what do you think? What caused the woman's facial bones to disappear while her husband's skeleton remained almost perfectly preserved? Was it a rare natural phenomenon, evidence of an ancient ritual, or is there still another explanation waiting to be uncovered by archaeologists? Share your thoughts in the comments below so we can discuss it together. The 3,000-year-old young woman's tomb containing a lavish treasure that shocked Iran. During an excavation at the ancient site of Tepe Chalo in northeastern Iran, archaeologists from the British Institute of Persian Studies uncovered a remarkably significant archaeological complex. At first, the goal of the excavation was simply to learn more about the history of the region. However, as layers of ancient soil were carefully removed, a Bronze Age burial suddenly emerged, along with a series of artifacts that shocked the archaeological community. As experts meticulously cleaned each layer of soil, they determined that this was the resting place of a girl who had not yet reached the age of 18. Despite her young age, what was buried with her was completely contrary to what one might expect from a teenager living 3,000 years ago. Surrounding her skeleton were 34 highly valuable grave goods made of gold, bronze, ivory, chlorite stone, serpentine, lapis lazuli, and pottery. The quantity and materials alone clearly indicated that she was far from an ordinary individual. Do you know what surprised archaeologists the most? It was the level of craftsmanship in each object. They discovered a pair of gold earrings, a gold ring, and 4 bronze pins, one of which was shaped like a hand holding a rose, crafted with remarkable precision. In addition, there was a bronze mirror, 2 bracelets, 7 stone artifacts, and 2 ivory hairpins, objects that would still be impressive even by today's standards. But there was one artifact that stood out above all others: 3 cosmetic boxes made of chlorite stone. One of them was engraved with the image of a snake and a scorpion, carved with extraordinary detail. According to researchers, this was not merely a cosmetic container. It also reflected the high level of craftsmanship, as well as the religious beliefs and symbolic worldview of Bronze Age communities. In addition, the tomb contained a unique seal engraved with the image of human feet surrounded by circular motifs, an extremely rare artifact that archaeologists are still working to interpret. Can you believe it? A girl not even 18 years old was buried with a collection of treasures that rival or even surpass many elite noble graves. This raises a major question. Who was she really? According to Dr. Ali Vahdati, along with researchers Raphaël Biscone, Roberto Dan, and Marie-Claude Tremouille from the British Institute of Persian Studies, the richness of the burial goods suggests that this young girl likely held a highly important social role within the Greater Khorasan Civilization, GKC, an ancient culture that once flourished but was later lost to history. Experts also consider this the most lavish tomb ever discovered at Tepe Chalo, and one of the most significant archaeological findings related to the Greater Khorasan culture to date. Each artifact unearthed not only reflects wealth, but also helps scientists better understand the lifestyle, social status, craftsmanship, and belief systems of the people who lived in this region 3,000 years ago. As you can see, archaeology is truly fascinating, isn't it? It has brought us countless valuable treasures and provided answers about civilizations from the distant past. So, which discovery do you find the most impressive? Leave a comment below so we can discuss it together. Also, don't forget to give the Ancient History channel a like and subscribe so you won't miss any of our upcoming discoveries. And for now, goodbye and see you next time.